I had always believed love would protect me. From childhood through to my 20s, I thought love meant someone would stand beside you no matter what storm broke over your head. I thought that was what Adrian Blackwell promised me. The boy who used to run across our family lawns with his shoes half-laced, the one who bought me strawberry popsicles when my braces hurt, the one who once whispered that my smile was his favorite sunrise. But on the day my son should have been born, that belief killed me. The lights above my head blurred and pulsed as pain carved through my body. My arms trembled on the bed rail, sweat plastered my hair to my cheeks, and every contraction tore me open until I was more scream than flesh. Blood pressure dropping, she's hemorrhaging, a nurse shouted. The monitor beeped wildly, a terrible high-pitched reminder that I was slipping. The doctor leaned over me, voice taut but calm. We need consent for transfusion now. Get the husband. Husband. Through the glass I saw him. Adrian Blackwell. Tall, broad-shouldered, immaculate in a suit even at midnight. Hands in pockets as though he were observing some boardroom presentation. The man I had given my whole heart to, every diary entry, every future plan, every whispered name for the baby we dreamed of. He didn't move. Instead, his voice came muffled but distinct through the partition. Why an epidural? Why a transfusion? She's exaggerating. I gasped against the pain, chest tightening with something worse than blood loss. It's childbirth, he continued, tone flat as a ledger. Women act dramatic these days. It will pass. And transfusions are expensive. Money doesn't grow on trees. I stared at him, searching for a flicker of the boy who once tied my shoelaces in the rain, who called me sunshine under our parents' cherry trees. But his eyes were cold. Detached. Already turned toward someone else. Celine Hart. The woman who had dragged him back from unconsciousness with CPR after he fainted at a gala. She was the one he thought of now. The one he felt indebted to. The one who owned his conscience more than I, his fiancée, his wife, the mother of his child, ever had. It hurts, I whispered, clutching my abdomen as the warmth of blood spread beneath me. Please. Nobody heard me. Or maybe they pretended not to. The doctor barked orders. The nurses rushed. Somewhere my mother was crying. But the loudest sound was Adrian's voice, sharp and impatient. She'll live. Stop making a fuss. A cold laugh scraped up my throat even as my vision tunneled. Was this what love was? The man I gave everything to, weighing my life against money, against pride, against another woman's face. My eyelids grew heavy. The ceiling light fractured into halos. The world receded into a narrowing corridor of sound. And then there was nothing. When I opened my eyes again, warmth cradled me. Not the warmth of blood spilling from a torn body, but the golden kiss of sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. My lungs filled without pain. My body felt light whole. I sat up sharply. I wasn't in a hospital. I was in my bedroom at the Winslow estate. White walls, crown molding, the familiar Persian rug my mother had bargained for in Istanbul. The vanity mirror reflected a younger face. Smooth skin, bright eyes untouched by the gauntness of pregnancy and grief. I stumbled to my desk and grasped the brass clock. The date on its small calendar wheel froze me. The day Adrian came to break off our engagement. Before I could even process, my father's voice thundered from downstairs. What did you just say, Adrian? The memory jolted into me like a shard of ice. I knew this scene. I had lived this scene once before. Adrian standing proudly in our foyer, declaring he couldn't marry me because he owed Celine his life. Me collapsing into desperate tears, clutching at him while both families watched. The shame, the heartbreak, the slow ruin that followed. But this time I had died once already. I was no longer that girl. Heart hammering, I crossed to the landing and peered down. And there he was. Adrian Blackwell. The man who once vowed forever and then watched me bleed to death. The heir who thought himself noble for throwing me aside. But unlike my memory, he wasn't standing. He was kneeling. On the cold marble of the Winslow foyer, in front of my father and mother, in front of his own stunned parents, Adrian Blackwell was on his knees. His head bowed, his fists clenched. His voice trembled as he spoke words I had once thought sincere. Clara, I'm sorry. I can't fulfill our engagement. Adrian Blackwell knelt on the marble floor of the Winslow foyer. The sight should have been shocking. Heir to one of the city's most powerful families, polished to perfection, posture always upright like a portrait come alive. now reduced to both knees, his proud frame bent beneath chandeliers and watchful eyes. Yet to me it felt strangely inevitable. In another life this was where my own knees had buckled. I had thrown myself down beside him, grasped at his arms, begged him not to leave. I had wept until my throat shredded, whispering words of love while his gaze slid past me toward another woman. I had been the one humiliated. But that Clara Winslow had died. This Clara stood at the foot of the stairs, silk robe trailing like a banner, and watched as Adrian's head bowed lower. "Clara," he said, his voice thick with false grief. "I'm sorry. I can't fulfill our engagement." His words echoed in the high-ceilinged foyer. Our parents sat on either side, the Winslows stiff with fury, the Blackwells frozen with unease. A performance was unfolding, but I was no longer the audience. He raised his head, letting the light catch the tears in his eyes, the tremble of his jaw. It was a show I once thought sincere. Back then I had whispered, "Don't do this, Adrian. I love you. Don't you love me too?" And he had answered, "I do love you, but I owe her. I can't betray her." Now I only watched with a cool smile. Adrian's gaze darted to mine, searching for desperation, for collapse. Instead he found calmness, as though I were observing a stranger's tragedy. His voice faltered. "It's Celine," he said, forcing conviction into his tone. "You know, she saved my life that day. I fainted, I hit my head. Everything could have ended. She kept me alive until help came. I can't betray her sacrifice by marrying someone else." My father's fists clenched. My mother's pearls clicked faintly as she trembled with anger. The elder Blackwells exchanged nervous glances but said nothing, too conscious that their son was the one at fault. Adrian pressed his hands harder against the floor. "Please, Claire. Our families are here. Don't make this harder. If you have to hate someone, hate me. But don't make me repay kindness with betrayal." He had perfected this act. A man torn between love and duty. Noble in his suffering. In my past life I had believed it. This time I turned to the tea tray. Slowly, deliberately, I poured myself a cup of pear blossom white, the steam curling between us like a veil. I lifted it to my lips and sipped. The silence grew heavy. Adrian's back stiffened. My parents' eyes flicked to me in shock. Why wasn't I responding, crying, arguing? Finally I set the cup down with a soft clink. "You can get up now, Adrian." His head jerked up. "What? You'll ruin your trousers kneeling like that," I said, voice smooth. "And it's unnecessary. Our engagement is already over." The room froze. Adrian blinked as though I had struck him. "Claire, don't say that in anger. You don't mean it." "I mean it," I replied calmly. "I never liked you, Adrian." The words landed like glass shattering. My mother gasped softly. My father's fury paused, shock overtaking it. Even the Blackwells' polished composure cracked. Adrian's face drained of color. "You're lying. You begged me, Claire. You love me." "In the past," I said, folding my hands neatly, "I mistook habit for love. Familiarity for destiny. I thought the boy who tied my shoelaces would one day tie his life to mine. I was wrong." His jaw clenched. "You can't just erase years of—" "I can," I cut in smoothly. "And I just did." My father leaned forward, eyes blazing with pride beneath the anger. "You heard her. This farce is finished." Victor Blackwell shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should discuss." "There's nothing to discuss," I said. "The engagement is void. I will instruct our legal counsel to draft a joint statement. Mutual decision. Amicable parting. Discretion, of course." The Blackwells fell silent. They had come prepared for tears and persuasion, not for icy efficiency. Adrian stood slowly, his hands trembling at his sides. "Clara, you don't understand. I owe her. But I still love you." I laughed, soft and sharp. "You can love whoever you like, Adrian. But you owe me nothing because I no longer want anything from you." That broke him more than rage could. His carefully constructed image, noble sacrifice, tragic lover, crumbled when I refused to play the weeping heroine. Without my tears his performance was meaningless. "You can't just walk away," he whispered. "I already have," I replied. And with that I turned and walked upstairs, silk hem whispering against marble. In my room I sat at my desk. My hands were steady as I opened a fresh leather-bound notebook. On the first page I wrote, 1. Audit every Winslow account. 2. Cut all ties with the Blackwells. 3. Find Nathaniel Rhodes. I traced his name with my fingertip. Nathaniel, the shy genius who had once died too young, his brilliance stolen by Adrian. This time I would find him. This time I would not let him be crushed. And this time Adrian Blackwell would learn what it meant to lose everything. The phone call came exactly as I remembered it. Clara, the voice trilled sweet and sharp at the same time. We're organizing a class reunion tomorrow. Everyone will be there. Are you coming? On the other end was Lydia Brooks, the self-proclaimed beauty queen of our college days. Even years later, I could still picture her flipping her curls in the lecture hall, basking in the adoration of boys who treated her as some rare orchid. She had one-eyed Adrian herself, circling him even though she knew he was engaged to me. When he ignored her, she had turned her jealousy into casual cruelty. In my past life I had declined. Humiliation weighed too heavy then. Lydia had mocked me anyway, spinning stories of how pitiful I was after Adrian abandoned me. This time I smiled. Of course I'll be there. There was silence for a beat on the other end, then forced laughter. Really? We'll see you then. When the call ended, I set down the receiver and let my smile sharpen. Some debts were best collected in public. The restaurant was already buzzing when I arrived the next afternoon. Laughter and clinking glasses spilled through the doors, laced with Lydia's high-pitched voice. I told you Claire was never good enough for Adrian. Honestly, it's admirable that he gave up years of love to repay the woman who saved his life. That's what I call honor. A chorus of approval followed. Toasts were raised. Glasses clinked. I smoothed the hem of my gown, silk custom shimmering faintly under the lights. My reflection in the glass doors showed a woman radiant, poised, not the discarded fiancé everyone expected to see. I stepped inside. The chatter cut off like a string snapped. Heads turned. Gasps, murmurs. Even Lydia's painted smile faltered as her eyes flicked over me. I walked in unhurried, heels striking marble, and smiled as if I had stepped into a gathering of dear friends. Sorry I'm late, I said lightly. I hope I didn't keep anyone waiting. For a moment there was only silence. Then I saw him. Sitting at the center table with Celine clinging to his arm, her eyes brimming with false humility. His expression twisted when he saw me, irritation flashing. Clara, he said stiffly. Our engagement is over. Don't even think of causing trouble for Celine. I laughed softly, the sound drawing every gaze back to me. Relax, Mr. Blackwell. I'm straight. The room erupted with muffled laughter. A few classmates ducked their heads, hiding smirks. Adrian stiffened, his jaw tightening at my pointed use of Mr. Blackwell. A deliberate stripping away of intimacy. I made my way to the only empty chair, conveniently between Adrian and Nathaniel Rhodes. Lydia had left it open, no doubt expecting me to squirm under Adrian's shadow. Instead, I sat gracefully, smoothing my skirt, and turned immediately to Nathaniel. Nathaniel, I said warmly. It's been years. How have you been? His face lit up with boyish surprise. Clara, you've changed, you're even more confident now. I smiled. In my past life, Nathaniel's shyness had always kept him in the background. Today I saw something else in his eyes. Intelligence, sincerity, and the faint ache of someone who had once wanted to say more but never dared. Beside me, Adrian shifted angrily. Celine leaned in with a tremulous whimper. I shouldn't have come. I'm sorry, Clara. I've ruined everything. Maybe I should just leave. Adrian caught her hand dramatically. Don't. This isn't your fault. If anyone should leave. His eyes slid to me. I raised an eyebrow. Do you always chase away guests at reunions, Adrian? Or is that courtesy reserved just for me? A ripple of laughter spread again. Adrian's face flushed, but he forced a smile. Clara, must you always twist words? Celine saved my life. She's the reason I'm even here. Shouldn't you respect that? I set down my chopsticks and rested my chin on one hand. Respect? Certainly. It reminds me of an old story. The room hushed. There once was a poor scholar who saved a fox spirit. In gratitude, the fox transformed into a beautiful woman and offered herself to him in marriage. I smiled faintly. Some called it loyalty. Others called it repayment. Either way, it was just debt disguised as love. Gasps. Laughter. Eyes darting between Adrian and Celine. Adrian's face turned ashen, then dark red. I'm simply telling a fable, I interrupted smoothly. Funny how quick you are to assume which character you resemble. The laughter grew louder, more open this time. Even Nathaniel chuckled quietly beside me. Celine's lips trembled, tears gathering. Clara, must you humiliate us? Us? I echoed, tilting my head. I was only speaking of a fox spirit. If anyone here feels humiliated, perhaps it's because the shoe fits a little too well. The atmosphere had shifted completely. A room that once pitted me now watched Adrian and Celine squirm. Lydia's smug smile had slipped entirely, her eyes darting with unease. Adrian slammed his glass down. You're saying all this just to drive me from Celine. You still can't let go. I laughed, clear cold. On the contrary, Mr. Blackwell. I let go the moment I realized you were worth less than the tea I sip in the morning. The room fell silent. Even Lydia could not save him from that blow. I rose gracefully, brushing invisible dust from my skirt. Well, it's getting late. Nathaniel, may I give you a call sometime? I have a project I think you'd be perfect for. His eyes widened, ears flushing red. Of course, yes, I'd be honored. I handed him a sleek card and turned without sparing Adrian another glance. The last thing I heard as I left was the murmur of classmates whispering, not about my humiliation but about Adrian's disgrace. Outside, the night air was cool, fragrant with spring blossoms. I drew in a deep breath, my heart steady. In my past life, that reunion had shattered me. Adrian had basked in praise while I was mocked as a fool. This time I had flipped the stage. Adrian and Celine could have their farce of love, their empty debt-drenched romance. I had something far more valuable. A sharpened wit, a clean slate, and the first step toward Nathaniel Rhodes, the man whose brilliance would help me rebuild an empire. The future was mine now. And this time I would not squander it. The card I handed Nathaniel at the reunion weighed on my mind the whole evening. In another life I had ignored him, too consumed with salvaging my doomed engagement. By the time I realized his brilliance, it was too late. Adrian had taken everything from him. His work, his credit, and eventually his life. This time I wouldn't let history repeat. 3 days after the reunion my phone rang. I was in my study, reviewing the first reports from our accountants about Winslow finances. Miss Winslow. The voice on the line was tentative, low. It's Nathaniel Rhodes. You said I could call. I smiled. He sounded exactly as I remembered, gentle, almost self-effacing. But beneath that quiet exterior was a mind like polished steel. I'm glad you did, Nathaniel, I said warmly. Did you think I was joking? He hesitated. Most people don't see me that way. I didn't want to presume. Presume away, I replied. I meant every word. I have a project and I'd like you on board. Silence hummed down the line, followed by a startled laugh. No one's ever said that to me before. Then consider this your first, I said. Let's meet tomorrow. I'll introduce you to someone who can help. The next afternoon, I took Nathaniel to the Winslow family's private research partner, Dr. Samuel Lee. For decades, the Winslows had funded his biomedical work. He was brilliant, eccentric, and fiercely loyal to my family. Dr. Lee greeted me warmly, then glanced curiously at Nathaniel. And who is this young man you've brought me, Clara? This, I said with a smile, is the reason your next breakthrough will succeed. Nathaniel flushed, tugging at his sleeves. I wouldn't say that. Nonsense, I cut in. Nathaniel is a prodigy in biochemistry. He has a formula for anti-aging applications that will revolutionize the market. He just needs the right environment to thrive. Dr. Lee's brows lifted. Oh, is that so? He turned to Nathaniel. Tell me about it. At first, Nathaniel stammered, his voice halting. But as he explained, his eyes lit with passion. He spoke of enzymes and cell regeneration, of formulas tested and refined, of the vision he had to make treatments accessible and transformative. For a moment, the shy boy disappeared, replaced by the scientist who could see the future written in molecules. When he finished, Dr. Lee was silent. Then he slapped the table and grinned. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You must join my team. Nathaniel blinked, stunned. You mean it? Dr. Lee laughed. Of course. With Clara vouching for you, I should have agreed before you even opened your mouth. I caught Nathaniel's gaze. His ears were red, his expression dazed with disbelief. I could see the thought in his eyes. Is this really happening? Yes. This time it was. Over the next weeks, Nathaniel threw himself into the work. I arranged funding, lab space, and staff. He brought genius, long nights, and the kind of dedication that cannot be bought. We fell into a rhythm. I handling strategy, networking, and resources. He immersed in formulas and trials. Our worlds meshed seamlessly, each of us filling the spaces the other lacked. Sometimes I would visit the lab and find him hunched over notes, hair messy, glasses sliding down his nose. I'd tease him lightly, eat something before you dissolve into your equations. And he'd flush, mumbling thanks before obeying. Other times he would look at me across a desk, eyes filled with something more than gratitude. A spark quickly hidden but real. In quiet moments I couldn't help comparing him to Adrian. Adrian had always been polished, confident, admired by crowds. But his charm had been surface deep, his pride brittle. Nathaniel was the opposite, awkward, hesitant, but underneath lay a foundation of loyalty and brilliance. He never raised his voice, never demanded attention. And yet, in the span of a month, he had done more to prove his worth than Adrian ever had in years. I realized then that trust is not built on grandeur. It is built on consistency, on small acts of integrity. One evening, after reviewing reports of our progress, Nathaniel turned to me. "Clara," he said softly. "Why me? Out of all the people you could have chosen, why did you invest in me?" I met his gaze steadily. "Because in another life you saved me when no one else would. Because you were overlooked when you deserved the world. And because this time I refused to let you be forgotten." His eyes widened, emotions flickering across his face. Confusion, wonder, something unspoken. Slowly a smile spread, tentative but genuine. "I won't let you down," he said. "I know," I replied. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something warm and real stir in my chest. The city had always treated the Blackwell name as synonymous with power. Their investments were called golden, their ventures envied, their air untouchable. But reputations are brittle things. All it takes is one wrong step, one poisoned whisper, to turn marble into dust. And Celine Hart was a master of whispers. In my past life I remembered the beginning of the Blackwell downfall vividly. Celine, draped on Adrian's arm like a silken shadow, urging him into riskier and riskier deals. She had murmured phrases like, "You need to prove yourself independent from your parents' legacy. Big risks bring big rewards. Don't let Clara's family outshine you." And Adrian, arrogant to the core, had listened. Now, reborn and watching from afar, I saw the same pattern unfolding. Celine leaned close at Gala's, her hand curling around his sleeve, lips brushing his ear as she urged him to take bold steps. "The Winslows are moving fast," she purred one evening when I happened to overhear. "Clara's growing bolder. Don't you want to crush her in the market, Adrian? Don't you want to show everyone that you're still the one on top?" Adrian's jaw had tightened, pride glittering in his eyes. "Of course. I'll show her. And I'll show this city what the Blackwells are made of." Oh. I knew exactly which stocks he would choose. In my past life I had tried to warn him. I had begged him not to pour millions into a company poised to collapse. He had laughed in my face, accused me of jealousy, told me I was trying to curse 3 generations of Blackwells. And then he lost everything. This time I didn't warn him. I fed the fire. Quietly, through proxies, I began purchasing the opposite positions. Investing where I knew there would be growth, withdrawing before crashes. My knowledge of the market's future was the sharpest weapon in my arsenal, and I wielded it with precision. Every time Adrian bought high, I sold quietly. Every time he doubled down, I reaped profits. The Winslow accounts began to swell. My father, once cautious about my sudden assertiveness, grew silent with awe as he watched the numbers climb. "Clara," he said one evening, voice tinged with something like reverence, "you've turned us into players we were never allowed to be before." I smiled faintly. "It's only the beginning." Of course, wealth shifts never stay hidden for long. The city thrived on gossip, and soon whispers ran rampant through drawing rooms and cocktail lounges. "Have you heard? The Blackwells lost nearly 10 million on that tech startup." "Impossible. Adrian Blackwell doesn't make mistakes." "Tell that to the investors," he begged to join him. Meanwhile, the Winslows seemed to be thriving. At one charity banquet, I arrived in a sapphire gown, Nathaniel by my side in a tailored suit I had insisted on buying him. The moment we entered, I felt the change in the air. Eyes followed me, not with pity this time but with respect. Adrian across the room with Celine stiffened. His smile faltered when he saw the way people gravitated toward me, eager to discuss partnerships, eager to be aligned with the Winslow rise. I caught his gaze deliberately and raised my glass in a silent toast. His jaw tightened until I thought it might crack. The more Adrian lost, the more desperate he became. I knew the signs well from my first life. The late nights, the sudden temper, the way he clung harder to Celine as though her presence could justify his ruin. But Celine's mask began to slip. At a private dinner I attended by coincidence, I overheard their hushed voices turn sharp. "You promised me, Adrian," Celine hissed, her nails digging into his arm. "You said these investments were certain. Do you know how people are laughing at me now?" "They'll turn around," he snapped. "They always do." "They won't." Her voice trembled with fury. "Claire is making a fool of you. Of us. Every day she grows stronger while you—" "Enough." His shout echoed through the corridor. Silence followed, heavy and brittle. I turned away before they noticed me, a cold smile curving my lips. In my past life, their whispers had been my torment. Now their arguments were my music. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and I worked tirelessly. His research flourished under the protection and resources I provided. Dr. Lee praised him as the brightest mind he had seen in decades. Late nights in the lab became common. I would bring him coffee, watch as he scribbled formulas across whiteboards, his eyes alight with brilliance. Sometimes he would glance up and catch me watching. He'd blush, push his glasses up and mutter, "Don't stare, it makes me nervous." I would laugh softly. "Then stop being so worth staring at." His ears would turn crimson but his focus never wavered. Unlike Adrian, Nathaniel didn't need the world's validation. He only needed a chance. And I had given it to him. By autumn the Blackwell accounts were bleeding. Their once proud family struggled to maintain appearances. They sold properties quietly, cut back on staff, leaned harder on borrowed money. But in public Adrian tried to keep the facade. He boasted of long-term strategy, claimed his losses were short-term volatility. Some people pretended to believe him. Most did not. At a grand ball, I watched as an old business ally turned from Adrian mid-conversation and hurried over to me instead. The look on Adrian's face, shock, humiliation, rage barely contained, was worth more than gold. Celine's smile that night was brittle, painted on, her eyes darting nervously as though the world might collapse beneath her heels. And I knew it would. The invitations had been printed on heavy cardstock, embossed with gold filigree, the Blackwell crest pressed deep into the paper as though prestige could be stamped back into existence. "Mr. Adrian Blackwell and Miss Celine Hart cordially invite you." I read the words once, then set the envelope aside. How many times had I dreamed of my wedding with Adrian? Of gowns and vows, of a family smiling proudly as we stepped into forever together. In my past life, it had been the dream that sustained me even as he slipped further away. Now the same man, bankrupt and desperate, clung to Celine as though a ceremony could glue together the pieces of his shattered pride. I smiled faintly. Let him try. The Blackwells had booked the city's grandest hotel ballroom. Once, it would have glittered with excess. Chandeliers dripping with crystal, flowers imported from overseas, champagne towers climbing toward the ceiling. But this time the grandeur had cracks. The chandeliers were dimmer, fewer flowers adorned the hall, and though guests arrived dressed to impress, whispers floated beneath the music. "Did you hear about their investments? Losses in the tens of millions." "Then why waste what's left on a wedding like this?" "To save face, of course." I entered on Nathaniel's arm, a vision in emerald silk, my presence instantly silencing conversations. The Clara Winslow who had once been mocked as the abandoned fiancée was gone. This Clara was untouchable. Nathaniel, awkward in his tuxedo, blushed under the stairs but stood tall. "Everyone's looking at you," he whispered. "They're looking at us," I corrected softly, slipping my hand through his arm. Across the hall Adrian saw me. For a fleeting second light flared in his eyes, habit, memory, longing, but then his pride crushed it down. He turned away, jaw clenched, pulling Celine closer. The guests settled. The music swelled. Adrian took his place at the altar, straight-backed, mask of composure firmly in place. Celine was meant to make her grand entrance through the towering doors at the back of the hall. The minutes ticked by. 10, 15. Murmurs rippled through the room. Mrs. Blackwell fidgeted, whispering urgently to the wedding coordinator. Mr. Blackwell's face grew ashen, his eyes darting toward the doors. Finally, a staff member burst in, pale and breathless, clutching an envelope. He rushed to the Blackwell parents, who tore it open with trembling hands. Mrs. Blackwell read the first line, and fainted dead away. Gasps filled the hall. Adrian lunged forward to catch her, the envelope slipping from her grasp. It fluttered to the floor, where an eager guest snatched it up and began reading aloud before anyone could stop him. "I'm done," the guest recited, voice quivering with glee. "You can marry yourself. Signed, Broke Girl." A shocked silence, followed by an explosion of laughter and whispers. But the horror wasn't finished. Another slip of paper fell from the envelope. A woman nearby snatched it, her eyes widening. This is a paternity report," she gasped. "No biological relation confirmed. The child isn't his." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Adrian froze, his face drained of blood as if the floor had opened beneath him. No, that's impossible," he whispered. Guests surged with whispers, some cruel, some gleeful. She played him. The mighty Blackwells, ruined by a woman and their own arrogance. What a scandal. This will be in every paper by morning. Mr. Blackwell clutched his chest, staggering. Servants rushed to support him. Adrian dropped his mother's limp form onto a chair and stumbled forward, grabbing at the damning report with shaking hands. "Hannah, Celine," he roared, voice cracking. "Where is she? Where is she?" But Celine was gone. I stood at the edge of the chaos, calm as a still pond. In my past life I had been the one humiliated at gatherings. I had been the one whispered about, pitted, mocked. Now it was Adrian. He had lost money, lost dignity, and now lost the woman he sacrificed everything for. His parents collapsed in ruin before his eyes. His pride, once towering, lay shattered like glass underfoot. Nathaniel leaned closer, his voice low. "We should go. This isn't our scene anymore." I smiled faintly. "No. It's exactly my scene. For once I don't have to be the one bleeding. I just have to watch." Still, I turned gracefully, my gown sweeping behind me. We left as the chaos swirled. Guests shrieking, doctors rushing, Adrian screaming Celine's name like a madman. Outside the night was cool. Nathaniel offered me his arm again, his touch steady, grounding. "You don't regret coming?" he asked quietly. "No," I said, gazing at the glittering city skyline. This was the ending that needed to happen. The world had to see him for what he really is. "And you?" I turned to him, smiling softly. "They'll see me for what I've become." His gaze lingered on me, warm, steady. Unlike Adrian's eyes, which had always wandered, Nathaniel's never wavered. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just watching Adrian's collapse. I was standing in the beginning of something new. The city devoured the Blackwell scandal like vultures tearing at a carcass. Every paper, every gossip column, every dinner conversation whispered the same story. The heir abandoned at the altar, his fiancée exposing him with a paternity test, his parents struck down by shock and disgrace. Within weeks, the empire that had once looked untouchable crumbled. Blackwell holdings were liquidated, creditors swarmed, investors fled. Their once glittering name became a byword for humiliation. And Adrian? He disappeared from society, vanishing from the parties and boardrooms where he once reigned. But I knew it was only a matter of time before he came to me. It was late when it happened. The Winslow estate was quiet, moonlight spilling across polished floors. I sat in the study with Nathaniel, going over lab reports. He leaned close, explaining formulas with soft enthusiasm, his fingers smudged with ink. Then came the knock. Heavy, desperate. The butler entered, his expression uneasy. "Miss Winslow, it's Mr. Blackwell. He insists on seeing you." Nathaniel stiffened, his eyes flicking to mine. I closed the folder slowly, savoring the moment. "Let him in." Adrian stumbled into the foyer, and for a heartbeat I didn't recognize him. His once immaculate hair was streaked with gray, his tailored suits replaced by a wrinkled jacket hanging loosely on his frame. His eyes, once sharp with arrogance, were hollowed, rimmed with sleepless shadows. He saw me and froze, something breaking across his face. Slowly, as though his pride were chains dragging him down, he fell to his knees. Clara, he rasped. I was wrong. I was blind. Please, forgive me. Take me back. The sight should have made me ache. In my past life I would have rushed forward, lifted him, whispered reassurances. I would have believed that this broken man was finally the Adrian I had always longed for. But now, all I felt was a cold satisfaction. He bowed his head, voice cracking. I lost everything. My parents, they're gone. My family's fortune destroyed. Celine, she betrayed me. I have nothing left. Nothing but you. Claire, you loved me once. Please, love me again. I let the silence stretch until it smothered him. Then I laughed softly. You think you lost me to Celine. But you're wrong, Adrian. His head jerked up, eyes wide, clinging to hope. You lost me to yourself, I said, my voice sharp as glass. You killed what we had long before Celine entered the picture. With your arrogance, your cruelty, your refusal to see me as anything more than convenience. He flinched as though struck. Beside me, Nathaniel shifted. He didn't speak, he didn't need to, but his presence was steady, a wall of loyalty at my side. Adrian's eyes flicked to him, narrowing with bitter jealousy. So it's him, isn't it? That's why you won't forgive me. You've replaced me with this. He spat the word as if Nathaniel were something beneath him. Nathaniel met his gaze calmly, though a faint flush touched his cheeks. She doesn't need to replace you, he said quietly. Because she never needed you in the first place. Adrian recoiled as though the truth were acid. I can change. Adrian cried, desperation unraveling his voice. I'll prove it. I'll build it all back again. Just give me another chance, Clara. Please. I stepped closer, my heels clicking against marble, and looked down at him. Another chance? I echoed. Tell me, Adrian, did I get another chance when you left me bleeding in the delivery room? Did I get another chance when you refused to sign the form that would have saved my life? His lips parted, but no sound came. His shoulders shook. No, I said coldly. You let me die once. And I will never let you close enough to do it again. Tears filled his eyes, the proud air reduced to a ruined man on his knees, begging for scraps of a past I had already buried. I turned away, my hand brushing Nathaniel's arm. Let's go. Nathaniel hesitated, glancing back at Adrian's collapsed form. But when he saw the resolve in my eyes, he nodded and followed. As we walked toward the doors, Adrian's voice broke behind us. Clara, please, don't leave me like this. I paused at the threshold just long enough to deliver the final blow. You left yourself long before I ever did. And then I walked out, the doors closing behind me with a final echoing thud. Success has a sound. It isn't applause or champagne corks. It's quieter, steadier. It's the hum of machines in the lab, the turning of pages in boardrooms, the whispered awe of competitors who realize too late they've underestimated you. That sound surrounded me now. Nathaniel stood at the head of the conference table, his notes scattered, his voice trembling only slightly as he explained the final results. The anti-aging skincare formula he had labored over for months, years in truth, was complete. Clinical trials showed staggering success. The market potential was immeasurable. Executives, scientists, even my father leaned forward, captivated. And through it all I watched Nathaniel. His once shy gaze was steady, his passion unmistakable. This, he concluded, is only the beginning. With the Winslow family's support, we can scale production within the year. We'll change the industry forever. The room erupted in approval. I allowed myself a small, private smile. In my past life, these accolades had been stolen by Adrian. He had claimed Nathaniel's brilliance as his own, using my love-blinded introductions to rob a man who only wanted to create. But this time Nathaniel stood in the light where he belonged. That evening, after the meetings and celebrations, I stood alone on the Winslow balcony, looking out at the city glittering under twilight. Once I had dreamed of standing here as Adrian's wife, believing our names together would carve a dynasty. Instead, that dream had turned to ashes in the delivery room where he had let me die. I touched the railing, cool beneath my fingers. All the glory I once gave him, all my introductions, my loyalty, my resources, I had poured them into Nathaniel instead. And in return I had not been betrayed. I had been rewarded. The Winslow name, once mocked, was now synonymous with innovation and strength. And I, Clara Winslow, was no longer a discarded fiancée or a weeping widow. I was the architect of my own empire. But some ghosts linger. Weeks later I saw him again. Not at a gala, not at a meeting. Those doors were forever closed to him. I saw him on the street outside the Winslow building, gaunt and gray-haired, his once proud frame bent beneath the weight of ruin. He called my name, his voice hoarse. Clara. I paused, Nathaniel beside me. Adrian's eyes were desperate, hollow. You've won, he whispered. Everything I had, it's yours now. Please. Just, don't leave me like this. I can't live without you. The words that once would have undone me now felt pitiful. I looked at him steadily. Adrian, you killed what we had long before Celine or bankruptcy. You left me when it mattered most. And I will never forget that. Tears glistened in his eyes. He reached out but I stepped back, slipping my hand into Nathaniel's instead. You didn't lose me to Celine, I said softly, echoing the truth he had never grasped. You lost me to yourself. His face crumpled. The proud air was gone, leaving only a broken man, trembling on the sidewalk as the world walked past him. I turned away. Nathaniel didn't speak until we were inside the car. His hand, warm and steady, remained over mine. Finally he said quietly, "Does it hurt? Seeing him like that?" I thought about it. Once it would have gutted me. Once I would have thrown away everything to save Adrian from pain. Now I felt only a distant echo, like hearing a song from a childhood long gone. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't hurt. Not anymore." Nathaniel's eyes softened. He looked as though he wanted to say something but held back. So I said it for him. "You were right," I murmured. "I never needed him. What I needed was someone who saw me. And you've done that from the start." His breath caught and for once the shy scientist had no words. Instead he squeezed my hand, his silence more eloquent than any vow. In the weeks that followed our project soared. Investors poured in. Magazines featured me on their covers as the Phoenix heiress, the woman who had turned betrayal into empire. Nathaniel was celebrated as the genius who would change the world. But for me the true triumph wasn't the money or the fame or the headlines. It was the peace. For the first time since my rebirth, I slept without nightmares of blood and betrayal. The faces of Adrian and Celine no longer haunted me. Their fall had been inevitable. And I had finally let go. One evening as Nathaniel and I walked through the Winslow Gardens, I paused beneath the lantern-lit trees. "This time," I said softly, "I'm not chasing anyone. Not a man, not love, not approval." Nathaniel looked at me, eyes full of quiet wonder. "This time," I continued, slipping my hand into his, "I'm choosing myself. And that makes all the difference." He smiled, gentle, genuine, and together we walked forward, hand in hand, leaving behind the ashes of the past. The end.